Welcome back to Sci-Fi versus Reality. I'm your host, Kurt Google F. Shapiro. Last episode, we tried to disprove The Martian, but today we're going to take a slightly different angle. I'm going to be explaining just how accurate one of the earliest space movies really was. World-renowned as one of the best space movies, if not one of the best movies ever, I'm going to be examining 2001, A Space Odyssey. Written by Arthur C. Clarke and directed by Stanley Kubrick, this movie is still known today as a very accurate and surprisingly bone-chilling story of space adventure. But how is something made in 1968, even before the very first NASA manned Apollo mission, still so relevant today? We're going to be going over just what they got right and how. The first topic that I'll talk about is the reality of the different spacecraft, in particular the Discovery 1. Stanley Kubrick made the excellent decision to do just an incredible amount of research, especially on what future projects could look like, and not just what the technology was like in the 1960s. He hired many different designers, artists, and most importantly, ex-NASA engineers and project heads. They helped him to replicate the current technology for things like spacesuits and telephones, but then introduced many new factors like designs for the spacecraft and communication aspects. Despite being very different from modern, flashy films that deny physics in order to grant the audience cool special effects, Kubrick went straight for being as scientifically accurate as possible. He is absolutely silent on all of the spacewalks during the movie, something that's definitely true, and the communication from Earth took 10 minutes, something that is also accurate. Engineers calculated that it would take around 15 months to get to Jupiter using a nuclear engine. The Discovery 1 does have nuclear engines, and it takes roughly that much time. But one of the things that the director put a lot of time and money into, something that even today is a future technology, is the spin grav part of the spaceships we see in 2001. Kubrick spent around $75,000 or $5 million today on building just the set for the rotating hab of the Discovery 1. Overall, all of these different additions and parts of the spacecraft that we see are the things that really make this movie authentic and definitely more realistic than any other space movie of its time. Coming to our second topic today, the HAL 9000 is one of the major aspects of this film that really made it what it is and gave it its reputation today. The HAL 9000 is a fully sentient AI and one of the crew members of the Discovery. The HAL 9000 is the machine as well as the character that lends this movie the psychological thriller part of the plotline, and it really reflects some modern challenges that AI engineers are facing today. Obviously, many homes around the world now include modern AI support machines, from just Siri in every iPhone, to full video interface screens like Google and Amazon's Alexa. The movie hit the perfect and most realistic spot of AI, where the machine runs and controls all of the core components of the ship, while also being able to have full conversations with the astronauts. However, in order to make this movie have the incredible narrative that it does, of course the HAL 9000 had to become homicidal.
Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me.
And even though this concept is the premise for many cheesy sci-fi movies, it actually brings 2001 closer to reality rather than farther away. This is a factor that people have to take into consideration, and it reflects just what the public might come to fear in the future. While a small part of the movie, the fact that Kubrick decided to include a cryogenic sleep for the remainder of the astronauts on the Discovery really demonstrates just how far ahead of the current times this movie was, and yet just how accurate it was going to become. Even today, while we are certainly more advanced, no one has figured out how truly possible or reliable cryonics is. We know that it is at least possible to freeze someone without doing too much damage, but the real problem is in reviving them later. However, even though we might not have the technology perfected today, it's definitely something that scientists will continue to pursue. So we can safely say that Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke got this small detail entirely accurate and relevant to today. Overall, the ultra-famous sci-fi movie 2001: A Space Odyssey from 1968 held up pretty well when compared to today's world. There will always be things that aren't possible just yet, but Stanley Kubrick covered most space concepts extremely well. Alright, that finishes up this episode of Sci-Fi vs. Reality. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.